Yeah, again, hi, Aaron. Thank you for joining our Maxx-solar-online Academy alumni event, Lunch and Learn. We are holding these events 2 times a year and always searching for great speakers and very inspirational people. Therefore, we are super happy and grateful that you agreed to be our keynote speaker for today. I think we should jump right in, as we are all burning to learn more about you, your company, Momint, the blockchain technology, and how you found a solution that tackles the energy crisis by crowdfunding renewable energy infrastructure. Aaron, the Zoom stage is yours now.
Cool. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. So I was told that today I need to give you guys a keynote speech, but I personally find them quite boring, to be honest. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of quick context and background about what it is we do and what Momint is and how the crowdfunding works. I have to also apologize. I do have some background noise and people, as you can see. I'm at another conference at the same time, but I was so excited to do this. So I'm really keen to be here. I'm going to share my screen quickly. Can you guys please let me know once you can see my screen?
We see your screen.
Just a thumbs up, Christine.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, great. So what we do effectively is we allow individual people, and I know I've got some fellow South Africans in the room here who can attest to how bad the energy crisis in the country is right now. The government is not able to really meaningfully drive the needle on generation capacity for individuals. So what we do is we allow individuals to be able to contribute and all crowdfund together to build these installations. We always choose installations that go onto big institutions. So I'm not talking about, for a home individually. So this will be a school or a body corporate, a clinic, like a hospital. So it's always institutions that provide the most community value around them. And so effectively how it works is we fractionalize a solar installation like this one, and we turn every individual solar cell into NFT. If you guys are familiar with what NFTs are, it's basically a digital asset. What we do is we put all the legal contracts and information about that installation actually embedded in the token. So anyone who owns one of those tokens has a legal enforceable right to the underlying asset, which in this case is a solar cell, and that's enforceable in 160 jurisdictions around the world. So now you own a solar cell. That's pretty cool. What makes it cooler is that there's a 20-year agreement to lease the electricity that your solar cell produces embedded into that same token. So you have a site, like I said, a school or a hospital, etc., who's busy leasing that asset from you and busy paying you for the electricity that it generates. And then we use the blockchain to distribute those revenues through a smart contract. And what that basically does is it creates a transparent ledger of who all's earning and how much they're earning off of their investment over time. So one of the other problems that we face in Africa, and maybe the whole world faces this issue, is corruption, right? What this does is it makes everything a lot more transparent, so it removes the opportunities for corruption to occur. And then, of course, because you own this little solar cell and it's yours as a digital asset, that enables you to trade it around the world very quickly and easily. So anyone from anywhere in the world can buy these solar cells and trade them with you. Because they're a real, actual underlying asset with a tangible value, we didn't expect these things to trade like we saw the NFT market trade with speculative artwork or profile picture projects. But actually, we have found these trading in the secondary markets. And some of the users, I'm quoting real data here, we have like 250% trade volume. So that means the tokens have turned over more than 2 times, like changed hands. And on average, they traded at a 35% higher value than what it was sold for. So I thought that was really, really interesting and something cool to share. It's just that there's such a demand for this kind of assets or this kind of opportunity that people are willing to pay a premium for that. Just to quickly touch on some of the common questions as well. The rights to the revenues are there for 20 years because it's a 20-year power purchase agreement. There is insurance and maintenance baked in. So one of the most common questions we get is, what if it gets stolen, or what if it breaks? maintenance and insurance is catered for, and then all the agreements are standardized. And really the reason for this is because we're solving some core problems in the industry, especially, I mean, if you guys are from the solar industry, you'll know for solar developers, one of the biggest problems is that they need access to capital. There's no lack of demand for people who want to build solar. The demand is there. People get it. They understand the value proposition of solar, but it still has a huge upfront cost, right? You've got to make that upfront capital investment to build solar on your mall or school or whatever the case may be. This allows us to crowdfund that financing. And then also, as a solar developer, you're not a legal firm. You're not structuring complex deals with off-takers, etc. That can be kind of daunting for you who's maybe just purely an engineer or purely someone who wants to build out a business on putting more solar on rooftops. So we solve that problem by having standardized smart contracts that dictate these things. Then on the side of investors who are willing to give you capital to build solar, they want to have liquidity, right? They want to know that they can get in and out of their investment at any time. And that's what this enables. I was actually just having a conversation now at the conference where there was a fund that invested in a bunch of different crypto tokens and a bunch of different things. And they banked heavily with SVB and FTX, and obviously those collapsed. The only asset they have left on their books that's worth anything is solar cells. And now the problem is that the liquidators need to get their money back, and they can't because those investments are locked in for 20-year periods. So they've called us up and they're like, hey, can you tokenize this investment so now it can become liquid and the liquidators can get their capital back? And that's what we're going to do for them. So it really is solving these problems for investors. And then lastly, like I mentioned, for corruption, you now have a transparent, incorruptible ledger. So that's the end of my 20-minute keynote speech. And now I just want to open up the floor for questions and conversations, and really anything that you guys want to talk about. That's what I'm here for today.
Thank you, Aaron. Oh, amazing. That was like really super packed information. I think still some need to process, because for many, to be honest, I think crypto tokens, NFTs is kind of, you hear it all the time, but you don't work with it. So, yeah. But I will open the floor for everybody to ask questions right now. Anybody wants to go first? Let me check the chat if there is something here. So everybody, you can ask questions. Otherwise, I will start some questions because I have like tons. But it would be also cool. I mean, it's your opportunity. Johan, do you have a question for now?
Yeah, I've got one question. Mm-hmm. Obviously, South Africa with all the load shedding. First question, does it work when there's load shedding? Is it with backup power, the solar systems?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's one of the core reasons why people are getting solar installed. Mm-hmm. So for those in the room that aren't aware of South Africa's situation, we currently have stage 6 load shedding. I don't know if load shedding is a global term. It's blackouts, so planned or scheduled blackouts where they turn off power in certain areas, and that happens for 2 hours 4 times a day. So that's 2, 4, 6, 8 hours a day minimum. That we have absolutely no power. Now, you can only begin to imagine what this does to an economy, to businesses that need to operate, to institutions that are like clinics. Like we're literally talking about people losing their lives because when the power goes out, the machine that keeps pumping air into the lungs no longer works. So people have to sit there by hand, busy scrunching. Like, guys, it's really, really severely bad, right? So, I mean, you have a scenario in Germany where you guys have to adopt solar technology, and there's many good reasons for adopting it, for renewable energy, for being good for climate change, etc. In Africa, it's different. You find a population that really doesn't engage with climate action or climate change to a large degree, but you're actually saving lives. That's what solar is doing for us because it's decentralized. And that's the one thing that I want to highlight. I know I'm not talking to a room full of crypto degens or blockchain fans, but there's almost this natural, beautiful synergy between solar and blockchain in that both of them are decentralizing technologies, right? Whereas before we had to have one government entity or private company that runs a nuclear plant or a coal plant or some huge energy generation factory. Now we can have actually just individuals contributing to energy load or energy generation in a decentralized manner. So there's no single point of failure there. And that's really integral to the conversation, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Sunny. Looks like you're about to ask a question.
Just came up. So maybe still trying to get some info. Sunny, you're muted. I muted everybody. Just use the chance. Open your microphone if you.
So thank you for the opportunity. Aaron, sorry I missed your presentation, but I'm sure that the good people at Max are recording it, so I'll catch up on it.
Absolutely.
Obviously, just the South African context, the whole idea around lack of energy, the load shedding is becoming a real pain in the behind, and anything that we can do, any technology that we can get to decentralize it, to democratize it, absolutely valuable. And I just got off a call now talking about, we thought we'd never hear this word again, about energy apartheid. Just a report released by the University of Johannesburg on how dire the situation is and how big. Yeah, so happy to be on this call. I'm probably going to learn a few things, but I left my details in the chat. So maybe Aaron, you share your details later, and then we can hook up and see how we can promote this idea of the blockchain. I've always been chatting about it. Virtual power plants, the blockchain, the payment mechanism, because my big area, besides the fact that I'm a residential and commercial renewable energy installer, I'm also an energy activist, a climate change and climate justice activist. So I want to be able to see how we can democratize this. So it's nice to do a 200,000, 300,000 rand transaction for middle class South Africa, but the real opportunity is at the bottom of the pyramid, and that's where we want to be talking to. So if we talk about democratizing the energy chain, we're going to have to talk about the ownership of the energy infrastructure, and that has to move directly into the hands of the people on the ground. So when you talk about decentralized, you must talk about decentralized ownership as well. So I'm a big fan of community-owned and socially owned renewable energy, and the only way we can make that work is if the prototype joins hands with how the billing will happen and how the payments will happen. And I think blockchain lends itself nicely to that process. So happy to hear more. I think
I'm so glad you brought that up, and really democratization, access, like these are the words that we're using in our office every single day. Because like you just said it, for a commercial home, it's 300,000 Rand or whatever it may be to build that solar onto your rooftops. What if you don't even have a home to build solar onto? But you have the capability to play a role once blockchain comes into it. So we've fractionalized down to this single solar cell, and the reason for that is because now it's 85 Rand for you to own a solar cell that's going to earn you revenue for 20 years, right? And this is what's sorry, I'm going to call you Sunny the solar guy because I don't know what your real name is. This is what Sunny is talking about. Is we have a huge wealth inequality gap in the country as well. And the only way to address that is to allow the bottom of the pyramid access to these investment classes that actually can build them generational wealth. I mean, 2 decades of income. And solar really is an opportunity. I think the world is beginning to wake up to this. You said it in the start of the call, Christine, that the sun's not going to invoice us anytime soon. I use that saying all the time because it helps people click and realize how big the economic opportunity actually is. And we have banks all over the world raising billions and billions of dollars to invest into solar. We have to be realistic with ourselves. These are profit motivated entities. They're not doing it because they care about the environment. And I'm really glad that they're doing it because I do care about the environment and it's the right move. They are not doing it because they care about the environment. They're doing it because it's a big economic opportunity. And that's why I think it's integral that blockchain and solar actually have a marriage, because blockchain is all about democratizing that economic opportunity. just to maybe answer one of your you mentioned the payment rails and how that works. So you just missed in my quick presentation, I spoke about how all the revenue that gets earned by the solar installation. So when somebody pays their bill, they're actually paying it through a smart contract that distributes that revenue to all the investors, like people on a share balance. Yeah.
Similar to the Sun Exchange model.
Similar to the Sun, they're actually one of our partners. So we've helped them tokenize a lot of their investments, because unfortunately the case there is when you invest, you're locked in for 20 years. Whereas with us, once you tokenized it, you can actually resell that on the secondary market to anybody else in the world.
Yeah, so solar is definitely the largest economic opportunity. Well, not solar, the energy transition. The energy transition is the largest economic opportunity on the planet. And if we don't change our thinking and change our methodologies, then the same people who benefit in the past will continue to benefit now. When I do my presentations around the energy poverty and sharing of just broadening the net, I use this one thing. When the grid was developed by George Westinghouse and Nikola Tesla in the early stages of the discovery of how to harness electricity, the bank that financed it was JP Morgan. And JP Morgan is still the bank that finances it today. And if we don't think differently about this ownership model, then that's going to continue for the next couple of generations, that the global 1% elite will make all the money and hoard it out of this opportunity, when actually the opportunity should be decentralized. And who are going to be the buyers? There are only, the rich is only 1%, and maybe the super wealthy only 10%. The other 90% is you and I and everybody else on the ground, and we don't get no opportunities to own these things. But in Africa, it's going to be less of ownership and more of actually getting access, because at the moment we still have 600 million African people. Maybe the figure is actually 700 million or higher that don't have access to a working grid at all. So just because they have the connection doesn't mean they can afford what comes out of the wire. So the opportunity is huge, even just to give people access. So how we talk about virtual power plants, how we talk about sharing. And I like what Eden said, some people don't even have a roof to put a solar panel on, but they do have the soccer field, they do have the local community hall, they do have the church next door where we can put the solar panels on.
We're doing a lot of churches. We've got a lot of churches in the pipeline.
We've got a lot of churches, a lot of rich churches, poor people, but rich churches. So we can have
for the churches as well. They get the solar installation for free because the power of the crowd. The crowd actually finance the installation. But I just wanted to add on to what you're saying about democratization. So I totally agree with you. But I just want to emphasize it's not only about the quality of opportunity, and there is most certainly a huge human element there. And that's why I say I really agree with you. But the other thing to realize is that it's actually just good for society, right? There was a story in the US recently, I think it was two or 3 months ago, where a large portion of the grid shut down. People were left without electricity. And the reason was because a crazy guy went to the power substation and he literally just shot at it with a gun, right? So this just shows you the weaknesses of centralization. Whereas if you have solar on every rooftop, on every surface that we really can get it on, then it's very, very hard to have that sort of detrimental effect, because each individual is sort of resilient to one piece of the grid or piece of that generation capacity failing. And that's why, again, I say there's a natural, beautiful synergy between solar and blockchain. And again, I want to emphasize, I'm talking about blockchain here, not cryptocurrencies. There's a lot of meme coins and altcoins and things that people are trading that maybe have no value. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what Sunny the solar guy was talking about, which is ownership, right? You can own an actual asset that somebody uses in the real world. It's life-changing to them, and you can earn the revenue of that. Christine?
Yeah, perfect. I think that is something maybe for the more people on the ground like me, or the installation guys who are now like, okay, I understand now. But Aaron, can you maybe give a small example for I would now want to be part of this thing. I'm in Germany, but still I think, oh, it would be cool to support South African solar projects, or I want to earn money because the sun is there better than in Germany. And so just an example how I would, okay. So how would, just an example, how could I enter a project? What is the lowest level of investment I can or have to do? So just that we maybe get an idea for a private investor, how he would do it.
Absolutely. So you can get involved from as little as $7. I think we've actually got a project that's $5 for a single solar cell. So it all depends on the cost of the installation. So we've got a web app, so you can access it on desktop or mobile. Just go to momint.so, or you can just Google. We've also got an e-commerce site called suncash.co.za. I'll put that in the chat. I think that's the easiest. suncash.co.za. So that explains a little bit more about, you know, what we do, how the projects work, etc. And like I say, it's about $5 to get started, to get involved. Here's the app over here, so you can see there's a bunch of solar cells. I can buy one right now. It's not complicated. So I've got my credit card connected here, and I just click buy. And it'll take like 30 seconds because it actually transfers ownership of the real asset on chain, and boom, there it's done. I now own that solar cell. Finished.
Okay, cool. And for example, I know we have people who were not able to join, but they're, for example, from Angola or Namibia. Would that be possible as well? Because I know the currency issues, the payment issues are sometimes a hiccup, but that would work as well if they pay in their local currency and it's transformed then into the 5 rand?
Yeah, absolutely. So we make use of one of the most popular payment gateways in all of Africa. So any card, unfortunately, we haven't got support for mobile money yet. That's come very soon. But any card will be able to work, particularly in Africa. Actually, we've got the highest sort of conversion rates in Africa for the credit cards working. So yeah, if you're in Angola, etc., work with it. And then also I want to say to guys like Sunny, you guys are developers and solar installers. We need a network of trusted installers on the ground who are doing these installations. And the way that the model works is that we bring you guys along for that 20-year period. So we ask that the installer maintains that install for a 20-year period and actually gets a portion of those revenues also for the 20-year period. So like you said, it's great you get a project for 300K on a home, but you do that once and then it's done. And what's your recurring sort of revenue? And we have to imagine that, you know, hopefully, we're thinking wishfully, in 10 years' time, we've installed solar everywhere, and now there isn't that much, you know, projects to be done. You want to be able to continue to make revenues and have recurring revenue for the future.
Because that would be my next question. Exactly, how can solar installers become part of your project? That would be, so they have to go to a quality check with you and share some projects they did, other things, or just we will share the information and they can reach out to you, Aaron. How would you proceed with these kind of things?
So share my information. What we do is we do some vetting. So check projects that you've done in the past. What equipment are you using? So we only accept tier 1 sort of equipment that has, you know, 25-year warranty, etc. So we've got a list of sort of requirements on who we work with, and then we have a list. So normally the developers are bringing us projects. So they're saying, hey, I've got this guy who wants me to do an installation and needs financing, and then we'll do the finance. But occasionally people approach us first as well, and then we say to our network of trusted installers, hey guys, this school has come to us and needs an installation done. They're in this area, who can do it? You know, so both ways work.
Cool. And another question would be, are you also looking forward to expand in other markets? For example, like I said, we have a network to Angola, to Botswana, even to the Gambia.
Absolutely. So the biggest hurdle there is that the reason why South Africa and particularly the Western Cape is favorable for us is because there's actually a waterfall of 3 people who could pay for this electricity. So first you get the offtake at the school who's just paying their normal rates, the same rate that the grid would charge them, except they never get load shedding anymore. After that, you have the capability to wheel it to other businesses who are buying that electricity. It's being wheeled to them. And last resort is that you can actually just feed that back into the grid and you can make a feed-in tariff. Now, the feed-in tariff is already higher than the cost per kilowatt of it doing that installation. So you've got a nice little waterfall there. We're very, very certain that every investor will make a return on their investment, right? Now, when you start talking about other regions, that's a question mark for me, and I'm being open and transparent. I don't know what the feed-in situation is like in Angola, for example. And so we would have to look at, when we expand to a new territory, do we have a similar kind of waterfall? Do we have a similar kind of security for the investors as well? Because the last thing I'd want to do is have individuals invest in a project and not make any return out of it. This needs to generate wealth, like I said, for the individuals, particularly the lower class or lower income population, so they have an opportunity here to build generational wealth.
Thank you. Yeah, very good to know. Yeah, Sunny, I see you raising your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you, Christine. So my question is a typical business type question. What is the minimum kilowatt size, and what is your average transaction size?
Sure. So the minimum like size of an install that we do, if I rand denominated, it would be 7 million rand. I think dollars is probably the easiest for everyone to use here, right? Would it be dollars or euro?
Rands is fine. I see lots of South Africans here.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we translate it.
So 7 million rand is the minimum. Average is about 35 million rand.
Okay, so that's a couple of 100 kilowatts minimum size. So
yeah,
that would put schools out of the equation, because schools go for 20 to 100 kilowatts. So
the schools that we've done so far have been in the region of 6 to 7 million, and the reason for that is because we actually over-engineer the installation. So we don't just service their baseline requirements.
Yeah,
you build on more as much as possible, so you can feed into the grid. Yeah.
And then are they typically grid tied, or now grid tied and battery? Only grid tied.
Grid tied. Yeah, typically grid tied. Yeah.
Because the returns are better on the grid tie, because once you factor into the batteries, then you can't recover the cost.
Exactly.
Any more questions from the crowd? Any more questions from the very very silent people in the back? Johan.
Yeah, just a question regarding the grid tie. Does it work with load shedding as well then? If it's or how does it affect the return on investment if there's load shedding?
So you would typically have a battery backup. So it would be grid tied, so you can feed back into the grid. And also that's just for redundancy, but you would have a battery backup so that there's no load shedding effects, because that will pull from battery, but the battery recharges from solar first and foremost. And that needs to be the case, because otherwise what you find is the grid goes down and then the grid comes back up, and actually the demand is now through the roof, because you first have to recharge all of the inverters and batteries that people have plugged in. But now you have that battery connected directly to the solar, and it's being topped up sort of throughout the day. So that's typically how a solution there works.
Okay, so it is a hybrid system that
a hybrid system, absolutely.
Yeah, grid tied and backup mode. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. Great. Just a question regarding the NFTs. We're not that familiar with it. How does it work? Is it linked to a specific solar cell-ish NFT? Is it on a blockchain?
Yes.
Yeah, just explain a bit about
that. So I mean, really, what an NFT, what it like the digital asset, what it is it's a certificate of ownership for the asset that you've purchased. So and that's I mean, a lot of stuff has happened in the art world that has shaped people's perception of technology, but that's really just art. And art has always been that way. This is just a certificate of ownership. And we actually, like I said in the beginning, we put the legal contracts in the digital asset. So you can never trade or move that asset around without carrying the legal contracts with it, which are enforceable in 160 jurisdictions around the world. So there's legal contracts in there that says the holder of this token is also the owner of the underlying solar cell, which is being leased by someone. They have the rights to the revenue.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah. Sunny?
Typically, what is the return?
About 12% per annum for 20 years.
12. South African
percentages.
Is that the return that you're getting in South Africa?
Yes.
12%.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
After costs.
Yeah, so that's 5 basis points above what you could probably get. Maybe 4 basis points above what you could get leaving it in the bank. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's okay.
So I think we have 1 minute left because we started a little bit earlier, and I know that Aaron has to go, even if it's very sad, because I think now all the questions scrolling up. Any final question where you're like, oh, even this is maybe a stupid question, even no stupid questions exist? It's your time. Don't be shy. Sunny, or you also
incentivize it. Anyone who's asked me a question here today, if Christine, if you'll give me their email addresses, I'll send you a single solar cell for free.
Oh wow, okay, so now
my first investment.
now guys,
Sunny, you've got one. Johan, you've got one. Christine, you've got one. Any final questions?
Any final questions now? You get a
Bajit, ask what's the time. Bajit, just ask what's the time and you'll get a free solar cell.
Bajit, now your turn. Come on.
Sunny, thank you for throwing me into that. I have a real question. I have a question. I mean, I totally identify with what Sunny said earlier about closing the gap, but we're failing miserably in this country of ours. So people like myself and maybe Christine and Johan have really, I think, used skills development as a way in which we can try to close that gap. And so I think that's where, you know, we kind of connected in the first place. But I mean, where I'm trying to go with this question is around that whole issue of crowdfunding, because just as it is very difficult to set up a bricks and mortar solar installation, in the same way, it's very, very difficult. The entry, the barriers to entry are quite high, and not least because of the cost of setting up some of these operations. So if I were to practically ask you, if we were to crowdfund, for example, hypothetically speaking, a training center for solar installations, how would it practically work? I know it's a bit of a big question.
Yeah, so you're definitely trying to throw me for a loop there. So you'd be crowdfunding a training center. My question to you would be, what is the return that you're adding to people who have funded this, right? Like, how do you generate a tangible, trusted, reliable return, right? And that's where I think, again, solar and blockchain have a beautiful connection, because every solar installation almost has to have an IoT or tracking sort of device. You want to know what the power output of this is. So that's very easy then to translate and track and trace as well, and say X number of kilowatts were produced that was sold at X price, and this is what you're getting paid, right? So it's all transparent, it's all very clear, and it's very simple actually once you understand the mechanism. When you're dealing with training individuals and people, then it gets a little bit, you know, difficult. Like now, if your returns model is to say, cool, we'll train them, and once they get a job, they've got to pay us back at some point. Does that person report that they got a job? When did they start? How much they're getting? But you know what I mean? Things can start to fall by the wayside.
Look, I mean, we'll have to add an element of community development to this type of conversation. So So the return, let's not talk quantitative for now. I know where you're going with the clarification question. For now, I'm saying we want to build a community development center. We want to make sure that it's got rooftop solar, and we will use that rooftop solar for on-the-job training. But while we're doing that, we're going to have a training center that's attached to the community center. And we want to make sure that we have all of the relevant equipment and whatever else to make sure that we're able to give them a proper training facility. Now, when we come back to the quantitative return on investment, I think what we're saying is that when people start using the facility, and I think this goes back to what you said earlier on. So when you own a cell, a unit, I mean, your unit of currency is a solar cell, am I right? Can the investors who buy that solar cell not get a return on investment from the community structure in 1 or 2 or 3 years, or does it have to be immediate?
So it's more about like we as South Africans, you know, we're very, very skeptical. It's more about the level of trust and sort of guarantee or surety that you can have on a return. So most certainly, if you're looking to crowdfund a center like this, and there's no promise or guarantee of return at all, I can certainly see you getting people involved still in that and wanting to just promote and build something like this. The other thing that you could do potentially is, you know, make revenue based on students coming through and learning, and then there's offer a return over there. But yeah, like there doesn't always have to be a promise of a return for a type of project like the one that you're describing.
All right. So because I mean, I think that this kind of blockchain crowdfunding mechanism can work really, really well for the purposes that we have in mind. And nobody needs to get poor. I mean, I don't think anybody wants to be, okay, we call it social entrepreneurship. Yeah, but I think let's be clear. It has to be sustainable. It has to be cost effective. It has to be a return. And then if there is a return and it is sustainable, then communities flourish. If there's no return and there's no proper investment, then the communities don't flourish, and everything just kind of just dies, you know. So I'm very keen on the model. I think is a very viable model, and I think it can work really well in community development kind of projects.
Yeah. I see there's one more question, and then I've got to go from the chat.
From the chat. Yes.
Actually, there's a couple here.
It's two more, but maybe we can start with Musa. What if, because I think it's easily answered, what if is when the investor wants to cancel the contract, and how do you deal with that?
Cool. So I'm not sure exactly what's meant by cancel, because they've already done the transaction. They've spent the money. So typically what an investor would want to do is then maybe they need their money back, so they would sell it off to somebody else. And like I said, we've got a very active secondary trade market, 250% sort of resale. So people have been able to offload this asset to somebody else if they're in need of the capital, and that's typically what you would do. Again, you're entering into a 20-year sort of contract, right? So you're in that contract for a 20-year period, or you can sell your asset to someone else. Now, for the second question from Marius, how do you find people to sell your solar cells to? That's a very, very good question, Marius. So I do, I go to conferences like this. I'm invited to talk about how blockchain, is changing the landscape. We do a lot of just educational content on blockchain. This is a not-for-profit initiative of ours because we want to prove the use case of blockchain. So there's no paid advertising or marketing or anything like that. We just talk to people, tell them what it is that we do. We've got a big community on the platform already, people who buy and trade digital assets all the time. So this is one really strong use case for digital assets that we love to promote. And yeah, it's through organic sort of means to answer the question.
Thank you very much. It was fantastic to get a deep insight into your company and what you're doing. So wish you all the best, and yeah, we stay in touch, I guess.
So thanks so much, guys. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Aaron.